Title: Art Beyond Sight, Bringing Art and Culture to All. Opening the Digital Doorway. Leveraging Technology to Build Inclusive Museum Experiences. The Morgan Library, October 22, 2014. Karen Gourgey, Director, Baruch College Computer Center for Visually Impaired People. Legal Web Access Standards.
So we're going to switch gears now and talk about what happens, what we need in order to make things accessible for people with vision loss on the web. And I think you're going to find out that a lot of this is also common sense. I mean, some of these things really, when you think about them, if you're being logical in the way you do design and the way you present what you have to say on the web, a lot of times you will end up making design that is going to be reasonable and useful to your population if you start thinking about people and thinking about the way in which people are going to actually apprehend what it is you have to say. And I was asked to talk about the 508 standards, and I just wanted to check. Does everybody know what 508 is or what that number comes from? No. So 508 is a number that actually comes from a section of the Rehabilitation Act. I just think it's interesting. The Rehab Act was actually first passed in 1973, and it was the first act that put into law the idea of that there should be accessibility in one form or another for people with disabilities. The regulations for that, you might be intrigued to know, were not promulgated until 1978. And it took a bunch of disabled people going down to Secretary Califano's office, at that time Health, Education, and Welfare, and sitting in his office to finally get those regs implemented. And so it was following from that such things as colleges and universities were told that they actually had to make their programs accessible to people with disabilities. And it's that same set of principles that in the end, or now, has as a part of it web accessibility and web accessibility standards. And so I want to talk about some principles of web design that actually come right out of the standards. And then when Rick comes up here, you're going to see them. You're going to see them in action or not. As you saw on the wonderful and well-described, I might add, well-captioned PowerPoint that Janet just did. So I'm going to go through some of these, and they are common sense, but still try to stay with me, and then you will, it'll make additional sense when you see these things up on the screen. So the first principle has to do with providing appropriate alternative text. Now, what does that mean? And especially so important in museums. Museum sites, right, have tons of pictures, right? Does anybody here know, Rick can't answer this question, but does anybody here know what a screen reader does when, first of all, let me just make sure, does everybody know what a screen reader is?
Yes.
That's a yes. Oh, good.
Does anybody not know?
I'm sorry?
Does anybody not know?
I'm not 100% positive.
Okay.
Yeah, so a screen reader is what I listen to when I use a computer, right? It's that program that interacts with the data and lets me know what's on the screen and lets me know all the spelling errors I've just made and all of that. So that's my entry point into the computer. So do you know what a screen reader says when it's presented with a picture?
No.
Typically it says image, 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 image. And it's really very gratifying to go to a museum website and look around at all these wonderful paintings and hear image, image, image. It's very inspiring, you know. But luckily, HTML, which is the building blocks really of when you're creating your web design, allows you to write what are called alt tags. And what these do is allow you to at least identify what that picture is. It could identify a logo. It could identify the title of a painting. Or the painter, him or herself. And then it also allows you the possibility of, if you want to make a longer description of the painting, the user can get a little message that says press enter for long description. And so then so they can either do that or not. But if they press enter, then they get a more full out description of what the painting is. And the great thing is that for a visual user on the web, they're not going to see that. This is something that it's picked up by the screen readers, and it's left alone by for folks who are just looking at the site. When we at Baruch College, we do a conference every year, and a spring conference, and when the registration goes out for that, we have a bit of alt text at the very beginning of our website, so that as soon as a blind person goes to our website, it says register here for the March 27, 2015 Conference on Visual Impairment and Employment Policy and Practice. You're welcome to write that down, because of course you're all invited. But, the visual user doesn't see it. There's a regular link a little bit farther down for the visual user, but for the blind guy who comes onto that site, you can't get away from it. It's right there at the top. So it's a very clever thing, but you need to use it. And you need to think about it when you're actually developing your site. So making sure that you have appropriate alt text as you go along in your development. Next one is make sure that your document is well structured. When people who are blind go onto a website, and again you'll probably see this when Rick comes and shows you, one of the things that we really like to do is look for headings. There's many screen readers have little cheating things you can do, like you can press the letter H, and it's a way of skimming down through the website so that you can hear those headings, and you can get kind of an overall, I should have said web page, but you can get an overall sense, maybe a little bit, of what's on that page. But if somebody's not using headings, and there are certain sites, I don't really want to mention the Huffington Post, but there are certain sites that have very few, if any, and it's pretty hard to figure out where you are and what it is you really want to do. So headings and well-labeled lists and things are things that you want to be able to do so that your user can follow you. I mean, in a way, it's again what I said before, it's like common sense design. When you write, you're going to use subheads and stuff to try to give your reader a path through what it is you're talking about. You're doing the same thing on the web when you do the web. Another principle that comes out in the standards is to make sure that your data tables have headings, and that their headings are associated properly with the cells, so that if somebody's reading a cell on a table, they know what it is they're reading. They have some sense of what that is, and again, don't get lost somewhere. Another important principle we have, another issue we often get into, is the whole issue of forms. You want somebody to join your museum. I want to join your museum. So I find the membership form and I start, and maybe I can put my name, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing blank, 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 blank. It's very interesting to try to fill out a form like that. And what the deal is that the fields in the form have not been properly labeled. And it's a very common thing that you can partially do it. Somebody remembers to label names or whatever, and then they forget to label the zip code or perish the thought, the credit card box. So you need to make sure that those forms are labeled. You need to make sure that your user, your blind or visually impaired user, can fill out all the form and can submit. A lot of times you see the submit thing is not labeled. That's interesting. You've done all the work, but you can't send it anywhere because you can't find the little label that says send it in, for Pete's sake. So you want to check on all that, and also you want to check that the individual is able to actually go back and check out if he's made any errors, and he can make sure that he can fix all of those errors. So that's, again, and that's a plug for when you do your web development and your site development, make sure that you might like to check it for usability. There's nothing like having somebody really try it and help you to see for sure whether what you've put in there actually really works. Another important principle is make sure that your links make sense out of context. In most screen readers, there is another convention. I talked about headings before. There's another convention that screen readers use, which is a links list in the famous screen reader JAWS that many of us use. There's a little insert F7 you press, and then you can go through the whole site and check out all of the links there. And that's a way of skimming too. However, can you think of what might be a problem in that in doing that kind of skimming on a lot of sites? Well, a lot of times you'll hear, click here, read more, here, there, image. All those kind of things. So that's why they have this principle and this standard in here. Make sure that your links make sense out of context. You could say, click here for more information regarding X. Just do a sentence. Don't do like this one random word and think that somebody's going to be able to intuit what it is, because they're trying to skim. And just the way, we skim differently than visual users, but we do try to skim. So you're supporting us when you do that.
We have about 3 or 4 minutes.
I'm sorry?
3 or 4 minutes.
3 or 4? I better talk more fast. Okay, let's see. What else do we want to make sure that we cover here? Let me see. What does this say? Oh, okay, very important thing. You have what we call non-HTML elements on the screen. On your site, you might have a PowerPoint presentation. You might have a PDF document. If you have a PowerPoint presentation, are there descriptions of the various pictures? Is a blind person going to know what it is they're looking at? Or, if you have a PDF document, has that document been what we call OCR'd? In other words, is a screen reader going to be able actually to read the words? Because if it hasn't gone through an optical
Sorry, a few seconds of video are missing.
recognition program, they're not going to be able to read it. So that's also something to make sure about checking all of the elements on your site. Just a couple more. One is allow users to skip repetitive elements on the page. So many times you'll go onto a page, and again you'll see this, I'm sure, when Rick shows stuff to you. There'll be a ton of navigational stuff at the top of every screen. Well, once you've seen it once, you don't need to see it 6 more times, right? Every time you go to a different page. The membership information again, or all the links to 1,000 different places you don't really want to go. So another HTML convention that is very, very useful and that you should have your web folks make sure they're familiar with is something that allows you to skip all that. Usually it'll say skip to main content. So that then you go to this page and you drop right into what's the new stuff on the page. And about the last one I have here, just about the last one I have here, make sure that you don't rely on color alone for meaning. I know that's everything in the world is color-coded, right? Red light means stop, green light means go, etc., etc. I mean, we live with that. But when you're doing something that you want to be fully inclusionary, sorry about that, and really accessible to everybody, don't make that the Lone Ranger. Make sure that there's another way for people to understand what it is you mean to distinguish. Also, in the fonts that you use, make sure that they're as clear and simple as possible. It's easiest for people with low vision to read fonts that are not filled with all kinds of curly cues and extra little lines and things that aren't essential to the letters. Now I know that's not so artistic, but you need to think about it in terms of your design. What are you, how are you going to handle that? That's approximately it. And again, to end with the idea is logical design, thinking about who's apprehending it, thinking about who's understanding it is really going to help you. I want to name one resource that I think would be very useful for everybody. They're called WebAIM, WEBAIM, Web Accessibility in Mind. You can go to webaim.org. They're out of the University of Nevada. If I don't have that wrong, I believe it is Nevada and not Utah. I always confuse those. Very bad. But WebAIM, you'll see these principles there. They also have a tool, and I will shut up. They also have a tool called the Wave, and you can use it on your site. You basically let it scroll over your site. You can download it, and it will point out to you little mistakes that you've made in terms of accessibility. So I think that's a very useful thing. Let me get out of here, and thanks very much for your attention.
Copyright Art Beyond Sight, 2014.